Hello everyone, it's Theme Park Avenue, I'm Eric, and for those of you who don't know, my favorite amusement park in the world is Cedar Point. And since 2000, the last 2 decades, it has made quite a name for itself as the roller coaster capital of the world. So we have to wonder, 20 years later, what will it look like? Before we begin, please subscribe to the channel for more coaster content so you know when new videos come out. Now let's get into the past at Cedar Point so we can make educated predictions on its future. And I should quickly note this video is mainly focused on roller coasters. Pretty much nothing else, because roller coasters are the main thing Cedar Point focuses on for new rides and such. So since 2000, Cedar Point added Millennium Force in the year 2000, Wicked Twister in 2002, Thrill Dragster in 2003, then a bit of a break, 4 years, Maverick 2007, then Gatekeeper 2013, then Rougarou was the remodeling of Mantis in 2015, Valravn was built in 2016, and Steel Vengeance was built in 2018. That is 7 new coasters and a remodeling of 1. So, since 2000, Cedar Point removed 4 roller coasters, being WildCat, Disaster Transport, if you count it, Mantis, Mean Streak, and Wicked Twister. Wicked Twister is now gone, unfortunately. So we have to wonder what could be removed in the future at Cedar Point. But quick note, when you look at when they made roller coasters, they had a period from 2000 to 2003 making 3 new coasters. Then 4-year break before Maverick, then a 6-year break before Gatekeeper, and then Rougarou and Valravn, so in a 4-year period they made 3, and Steel Vengeance was only 2 years after that. So it seems like they have periods where they have a bunch of roller coasters being made, and then a bit of a break. And it seems we're on a break right now, as since Steel Vengeance was the last coaster, 2022, 2023 will definitely be getting something new. We're going to get into that, but before getting into what roller coasters could come in, let's talk about what new roller coasters could be replacing old ones, specifically what old coasters could be gone. There are currently 17 major roller coasters at Cedar Point that are worth mentioning because Pipe Scream is not a roller coaster. And I have a list of half of the roller coasters at Cedar Point that could be gone. Let's go down the list. Let's start with the one everyone has been talking about being removed, Gemini. Gemini, I think, by 2041, will be gone. This is a bit sad, I'm sure, to many. I like the ride a lot, but it takes up quite a bit of land, and they could really make something good there. Somewhat compact, but a really, really good ride could go there. I'll get into what that could be later. Cedar Creek Mine Ride, will that be removed? You know what? I'm really not sure. Part of me is thinking, yeah, it's old and not a ton of people like it, and it's not very high capacity, and that's an issue. And in 20 years, if Cedar Point's constantly changing and evolving, they may want to remove that. That said, I'm going to say if one Aero roller coaster is staying at Cedar Point, it might be Cedar Creek Mine Ride. That said, by 2041, it definitely could be gone, but I'm kind of leaning toward it staying. I'm just not sure what they would put over Cedar Creek Mine Ride's Waterland. But moving on, another Aero, Iron Dragon. This is definitely gone by 2041, and I'm surprised it's not gone yet. I definitely thought it would be removed before Wicked Twister, because of a few things. First of all, it doesn't have a ton of historical value. There are other Aero suspended coasters in other Cedar Fair parks and other American parks around the area. Not to mention, it's not the most popular ride. I mean, it has some of the shortest lines. It doesn't really bring in crowds. Replacing it with a more major roller coaster could totally happen. Next Aero coaster, Corkscrew. This is tough because there's many reasons for it to go, many for it to stay. To go, it is the most hated ride at Cedar Point, and it gets very little capacity, so it could totally be gone because of that, and the park has no real need for an Aero looper in its lineup. And the fact that Kings Island chose to remove its Aero Looper also kind of shows that they're moving away from Aero Loopers. But on the other hand, the removal of Vortex could mean it's the only Aero in Ohio that people are going to go to, so maybe it should stay because of that. It has a bit of historical value for sure, and it does have some fairly long lines, and there's a bit of historical value to it. And the other thing is that the space it's on doesn't allow for a ton when it comes to a new coaster. That said, I am banking on this being gone by 2041. Now for Magnum. Magnum, I really think will be gone by 2041. I know, first hypercoaster, that's important, but at the same time, plenty of record-breaking coasters have gone before, so I don't know if the historical value is going to help it in this case. There's plenty of first coasters that are now gone, and it may be something the land is a bit too weird for them to work with for Magnum, but I think they could do plenty of roller coasters with that same kind of out and back layout. I'll get into that later, but overall, I think it's most likely that by 2041, as far as Aero coasters go, 3 or 4 will be gone, with Corkscrew possibly being a staying one, Cedar Creek Mine Ride possibly being a staying one, and Magnum unlikely but maybe staying. So it would be 2 or 1 of those 3 that stays. Now Blue Streak, 2041, oldest coaster in the park. Blue Streak's gonna be gone, I think. I'm sorry. I think they will build something new there because honestly, it has historical value as it is their oldest coaster, but they've removed their oldest coaster plenty of times. I don't think Blue Streak is going to stay. I think it'll be replaced. Now for 2 more popular recent coasters I think may be gone. The first is Rougarou. I am almost certain that by 2041, Rougarou will be gone. Because Wicked Twister only lasted just under 20 years. I don't think Rougarou is going to last much longer. It gets some hate. It doesn't have a ton of fans, really. And it's a nice plot of land that they could make a new coaster on. As Mantis, I liked it way better. And I don't know a lot of people who disagree. I don't know a lot of people who agree either. I think a lot of people are just like, it's a floorless now. And I honestly would not be sad to see Rougarou go in place of another coaster. And I think of all the B&Ms, this is the only one that's going to be gone in 2041. As it isn't really one that the general public and less thrilling seeker people like compared to the dive and wing coaster. So overall, I think Rougarou will be gone. Now for the last one. The last one is tough, but Thrill Dragster we should discuss. I do not want to see this go. It is one of the best roller coasters in the park and the world, without a doubt. That said, it could go due to breakdowns. There's plenty of times when a park has to close its best ride due to operation issues. A good example is Tivoli Gardens. They lost their best flat ride due to mechanical issues and capacity issues. Now, I feel like Dragster is too amazing of a roller coaster for people to support going, but I think in the next 20 years, it's a possibility that it could be gone. Of all the coasters I've named, it is the least likely to go, but I think if it continues to break down, like after the big incident that happened not too long ago, I really think it could be gone, unfortunately. Let's hope not, but maybe. Okay, so that is the 9 coasters I have discussed that could be gone. So, which ones will be gone? I think most likely of these coasters, the ones that will stay are Cedar Creek Mine Ride, Magnum XL 200, Thrill Dragster. So, what does that mean, I think? I think that means Gemini, Iron Dragon, Corkscrew, Blue Streak, and Rougarou all could be gone. Yep, 5 coasters removed, which is just about in line with how many it lost last 2 decades, I'm sorry, but you know, I think that does mean it's a possibility. So now, let's move to what coasters could replace these. I have a list of 8 potential roller coasters that could be added in the coming decades. By 2041, let's start by talking about the Gerstlauer Hyper. This is one that everyone thinks will be very soon, 2022-23. And given hang time being a recent Gerstlauer and the fact that there's been a little bit of Gerstlauer coming to Cedar Point, I think it's a possibility. I think it is likely that this will definitely happen in the next 2 years. Where will it go? Definitely, I think, where Wicked Twister is. Seems weird because there's not a lot of space for a Gerstlauer if it's going to be that big. But if they remove the theater that has not really been used much and no one cares about, that's nearby Windseeker, I think they'd have more room, and I think it'd be pretty good. I think they could make that Gerstlauer hyper. And it's one of the more likely coasters to come to Cedar Point, probably a definite. Now, let's talk GCI Woodie. This is the most likely manufacturer in my opinion, as if they want a bit of a smaller Woodie, I think GCI is the way to go. And they've been doing that quite a bit with their parks, and it's been very successful. Mystic Timbers, Gold Striker, and the Ghost Rider Retrek, all of those very successful rides. Where will that GCI go? 2 possibilities, I think. Blue Streak area, that would be a bit tough, but I think with a little working, they could make a decent layout. It'd be small, but a decent one. And it could be where Gemini is now. That is a bit more likely, as it would be a really good ride, but I definitely think that is a possibility. Now, let's talk Flying Coaster. It could be B&M. For years, I've been saying B&M Flying Coaster will be one of the next. Maybe because I think they work with B&M really well, and I just like Flying Coasters more than most of the B&M models, but where would that go? Without a doubt, Iron Dragon and Rougarou's plot. I think it would take up both. Whether it's a B&M Vekoma or a B&M Vekoma Flying Coaster, I'm not sure, because a Vekoma launch Flying Coaster could be pretty good. Though I do think B&M is the one I've always been saying, but that's because I didn't really know what the Vekoma Flying Coaster was before FLY's announcement. So it could be either, I'm not sure which. But the reason I think the Iron Dragon Rougarou area is great is because it would go over water a lot, like Manta at SeaWorld. And that would be really, really great. It would be like Tatsu in that it uses terrain really well. I think it'd be a really nice flying coaster. And it's definitely one that should come to the park. Now let's talk about B&M Surf Coaster. Not a ton is known about it, but I don't think that's going to come to the park. Maybe, but I don't think it's going to be there in the next 20 years. Even though Cedar Point has done a lot of B&M stuff, I think it'll be a while before we get that. It could happen near the end of the decade, but I'm thinking that's less likely. Now, one I haven't heard a lot of people talk about that I think could be at the end of the 2040 area, it could be near the very end of this 20-year period, is an Intamin Hot Racer. The big reason some would be against this is because Intamin has had many reliability issues, Thrill Dragster being the primary example, so maybe they would not want to work with Intamin. But if the Hot Racer is a success in the other places it's coming to, I could totally see this coming to Cedar Point. Where would it go? A few possibilities. If worked well, it could be a pretty large layout in the Gemini area. It could be where Cedar Creek Mine Ride is. With some crazy reworking, it could be, somehow, where Corkscrew is. If Dragster's removed, that could definitely be part of the plot of land. It could even be where Blue Streak is. A lot of possibilities. I think Gemini is the most likely area if they were to make that, but I don't know. Now let's talk about S&S Axis. This is one not many have discussed too much with Cedar Point because there hasn't been much reason to believe they'd work with S&S, but Tumbili is the big stepping stone for this. A 40 free spin coming to King's Dominion, of course people are going to speculate the Axis at Cedar Point. We don't know a ton about what a full Axis layout looks like, but since it could be compact, I think it could be where Corkscrew is, could be where Cedar Creek Mine Ride is. That'd be really awesome, but I think that's less likely. But probably the Corkscrew plot of land could be where it goes. Now, Mack Water Coaster is something I quickly wanted to throw in. I think that's unlikely, but just wanted to point it out as a possibility. I don't think that's going to happen, though. If it were, that could be an instant replacement for Wicked Twister, given how much space it would take up. Now for the last thing. I've mentioned all mainly thrilling coasters so far because that's what Cedar Point focuses on. However, I mentioned the possibility of removing Iron Dragon, Cedar Creek Mine Ride, Blue Streak, Gemini. All of these are more family friendly than some of the other coasters, And that would basically, if those were removed, only leave the 2 kiddie coasters. So if those were to all be removed, especially, I think there will be another family coaster coming to Cedar Point. What do I think is most likely? I think Cedar Point might replace Corkscrew with a Vekoma family boomerang. Given the plot of land, it could be good. And one thing to note is that lately, Cedar Fair has been upping their game with theming. You have Copperhead Strike and Orion, and then of course Snake River Expedition's a whole themed ride at Cedar Point. I think it's most likely that Cedar Point will move toward theming a little bit on some of these rides. I could see the flying coaster having a decent queue theme. I could definitely see a few things, actually. And the Vekoma Boomerang could have some really strong theming. Go through a very well-themed building thing. It would be very nice, and I think it could fit well in the area at Corkscrew, and I definitely think that is a possibility. So of these coasters I've named, what I think is most likely to be there in the coming decades? I think by 2041, Cedar Point will have the Gerstlauer Hyper, the GCI Woodie, most likely in the Gemini area, the flying coaster where Iron Dragon and Rougarou are. I think the Hot Racer could come near the very end, possibly in a different area. I could definitely see the S&S Axis happening, and the Vekoma family boomerang. That would be 6 new coasters in a 20-year period, which I could definitely see happening with Cedar Point. And what would be removed, I think it's most likely going to be Gemini, Iron Dragon, Corkscrew, Blue Streak, and Rougarou. 5 removed, 6 added. That would mean there's 1 more coaster at Cedar Point than there was. This could take a lot of crazy space working. I could totally see their slingshot ride being removed, honestly. Given that I don't think it's the most popular thing there, not to mention, it has a little bit of space that would help with the roller coaster layout. But that is really what I think could be coming to Cedar Point in 20 years. So I'm going to quickly put a picture of what the Cedar Point map could look like if all of these were to happen. Obviously, none of this is set in stone, but I can't wait to come back to this video in a few years and see if anything that I suggested comes true. And that is the whole video. That is what I think Cedar Point could look like in 20 years. It could be an even bigger roller coaster capital of the world, and there's so many models that haven't been invented yet, possibly, that could come to Cedar Point, but I'm not going to focus on that because we don't really know what roller coasters will be made in the future or whether they will fit. But thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Comment what you think could come to Cedar Point in the coming years or what might be removed in the comments below. Subscribe for more content. I'll see you next time.